Funny. Can
Hold on a
I
anybody
second.
hear
Yes,
you.
what'd you say?
can hear me, Fran, right?
Do I need to what?
No, you could hear him, Fran.
Can you hear me, Fran?
Yeah, everything's on.
Okay.
Are you ready, people?
Ready? We're here.
I don't even know what I'm ready for. Okay, this is Fran Lewis. Haha. On YouTube, they just sent it. Oh, we are live. And this is MJ Network in memory of my sister, Marcia Joyce. And I have one of my favorite people here, Dick Belsky, in the Claire Carlson series and Bonnie Traynore. And I love this series. Okay, so I got your questions, but the first question really that got me is the fact that people need to be more aware of dating apps and how dangerous they are. So why did you pick that? I was like, I never did dating apps, but I did do internet something. You don't want to do that either.
So you want me to
So
take that when you're saying why did we write a book about dating apps?
if dating app, why the app? That's
Okay.
really very important.
So I got the idea when a friend of mine met me for coffee and she was complaining about one of her bad dating app
Uh huh.
dates. And she said, "Well, you're a writer, you should write up all of our weird dates as like a funny, memoir thing." And I said, "Well, no, I'm a thriller writer, so I'm going to write this as a thriller where the woman goes on the app to get revenge on the smarmy guys that she's meeting in her dating apps." And that was kind of how the idea came. And then Dick and
It,
I knew each other from Thriller Fest and from he had reviewed a couple of my books and reached out to me, and I knew that he was a reporter, and so I've never co-authored with anyone before, but I thought with his background as a reporter, he would do a much better job with the character of Jake than I would, and it would be like a lot of fun for us to co-write. So that's how that came along, and I kind of convinced him to take this leap of faith. He can tell his side of that story, and that's kind of how we got started on it.
Yeah, yeah. It really
you
it
have
was
to be
not a well
louder.
thought
I
it was
can't hear
not a well thought out plan, Fran. I mean, it wasn't like
you.
we had figured this whole thing out. As Bonnie said, I mean, we never knew each other. And she lives like 5,000, 6,000 miles away, or whatever it is in Hawaii, and I'm in New York City. And I had read one of her books and reviewed it, and it was really good. And as I am wont to do once in a while with something like that, I just reached out to our founder and said, "Hey, I read your book. I reviewed it. I really liked it." So we started talking, and she started doing some of my books. And then she came up with this idea, like, "How would you like to write a book with me?" And in the beginning, I kind of was not. I thought it was not. I'd never done it, and I just
You
didn't
don't
really
want to do it.
like the idea. And then we started, and then at some point, as kind of just I guess almost like an experiment, I thought, well, I'll write a chapter or two and just see, what the hell, it'll be fun. I'll send it to her and we'll see. But I really didn't think necessarily it would go anywhere. And it just sort of developed from there. She would send me a chapter of hers, and I would. And at some point, Bonnie reached out to me and said, we have 20,000 words. We've almost got, the beginning of a substantial part of a book here. And we just kept going. And the whole book was written, I mean, really quickly. I mean, part of it being, of course, that we each only had to write half of it. But I mean, I think it only took a matter of weeks before we went from beginning to end. Even though, as Bonnie and I have said in other interviews, neither of us had any idea where the book was going while we were writing. Well, we had little idea, but not a lot.
Yeah, well, that's just a dangerous thing. I mean, well, sometimes when you don't have a lot of dates or something, and you go to, I went to one of these, not lab dating places, big mistake. You don't want to do, what they do is they take out a big book, they show you pictures of people,
Mm.
and they say, pick one. And you figure they're more your age range. So they must have thought I was much younger, which was nice. So they introduced me, I was in my 30s, they introduced me to somebody who was 18 and
Ooh.
20. And they were kind of not, I just said, you know what? And you pay for them. And there are some of them that charge you $100 for each date. So people need to be careful. So your character is Sonia. How did you create the first scene with her and why? And poor
So,
Sonia.
so the first scene is, this isn't a spoiler because it's perfectly available on the part you can read on Amazon or Barnes, or is it the ebook and the print book are wide, so you can get it wherever you want. And in the very first chapter, she's been doing stuff on the dating app to get back at guys, but nothing like really horrible, just little things to get back at the guys that were jerks to her. And this time she goes to confront this married guy who's posing as a single guy. She finds out that he's married with 2 kids and he was stringing her along, and she's pissed off, and she goes up, finds him on a hike because he likes to post to social media everywhere. And because of her confrontation, he falls to his death. So that's how the book opens. And so the tagline of the book is Sonya's fed up with bad internet dates, but she never meant to kill anyone. And so I wanted this sense of a person who's like, she's kind of on the edge. I mean, she's doing bad things, but she's not like a psychopath murderer. And she feels like, I guess, some remorse, and also just she's totally frightened that someone's going to catch her. And then I always had this idea for somebody like a reporter to go undercover on the app and try to catch her, and that's where Dick kind of came in. So that's kind of how Sonya started.
And that first chapter, which Bonnie wrote that first chapter, and it begins with the death. I mean, I think the first sentence is basically the guy dying. That was something we was a little tricky because we wanted to have that balance that she talked about, which is, we wanted Sonya to do something wrong that led to somebody's death, but we didn't want her to be a killer. And we went through various variations of what Sonya actually did that led to this guy's death. And what we wound up with is like, she's a flawed character, but she's not a bad character, and that begins everything that goes on after that.
Well, she's full of range and actions and justified her actions. And, people go on these sites and people lie. So they'll give you their portfolio, they'll tell you who they are. Sometimes it's really them on a picture, sometimes it's not. So how do you protect yourself? Seriously. And what she sounded like she wanted to punch somebody in the head. I actually like her.
Well, yeah, I mean, I kind of wanted women, I guess, like any of us who've been on a bad date and like wanted to strike back but didn't, you could live a little vicariously through Sonya. Um, I will say, people have asked, is there anything about me in the book? And I'll just say that I don't like calamari, so I'll just give you that little hint. I don't like calamari, and so there's a scene where he orders calamari, and that did happen to me once, where like I went on a first date and someone ordered for me, and it kind of like irritated me that, like, why would you wait and ask what I want? Like, why would you order for me? So anyway, all those little things, but that can kind of irritate you. And then of course guys do even worse things while she's on the app. Like, I don't want to give away all of it, but like the Russell guy, and you just kind of want to get that feel of she's just fed up. Like, she's fed up, and
Yeah.
feels like they should have some payback, but she's not a murderer. She's not a killer. But however, there actually is a killer on the app. So that was kind of the story that we went with.
And just to be clear, and I think Bonnie and I both feel this way. We're not doing this to expose the horrors of dating apps or anything, because it's not really about dating apps. It's about people, and the exact same kind of things that can happen on a dating app can happen when you meet somebody in a singles bar, or you get set up on a date by a friend or whatever. We just use the dating app as a place to set the book, because so many people are doing it. They're so popular. So many people these days are using them. But this is really about the people on the apps, not the horrors of the dating app. And it's you talk about the lying. One of the interesting things, like the character who dies in the beginning of the book. I mean, he's not even trying to meet women. He's just like, there are people who are going on these dating apps who are married men who just kind of want to fantasize and tell people they're not married, and they have no intention of ever even meeting anything, but they're just living out fantasies. So all this is stuff that we explored in the book.
Yeah, and I agree. Like, I say at the end that I met my husband on a dating app, but then I realized, like, back then it was about 15 years ago, and it was really a dating website because they didn't even have iPhones and apps back then.
Yeah.
So So you can, like, me and my daughter met her husband more recently on an app that's, a swipe type app. So of course you can meet people, and I don't know, I'm sure you've seen the movie Looking for Mr. Goodbar, right? That, and the 70s, I think it was 70s, wasn't it? About like the picking up a guy, how dangerous that is in a bar. So yeah, it can happen anywhere, right? It's just that with the app and with the fact that, like, the pictures and the fact that you can put pictures that are younger or only flattering, but nobody's going to put like horrible pictures of themselves on the dating app. So I think you have to build that into your assessment. But that's the same thing that you're doing with all of your social media. It's not just dating apps. I mean, those of us who are authors, when we get a lot of scams and people trying to, sell us stuff on Facebook, and with AI, now it's even worse with generating images. So yeah, it's not like really just an attack on dating apps. It's more like Dick said, a comment on human nature and what people will do and not do to get their needs met.
Well, the next question should be really interesting. Here we go. I like this character, but Jake didn't want the story. He didn't want to do it. He's a reporter. So how does he learn also about Matt, and how does he begin to investigate? Because we don't want to give it away.
Yeah. Well, so
I like Jake.
the Jake Parker character is very similar, as you probably know, Fran, to a lot of the other media characters I've written about in my other books, male and female. We've talked about them, and so the idea was how to use him, this kind of character in this book. And what I did is, I just drew a lot upon my own experiences of me and other newspaper people that I've known over the years. And basically, Jake is a guy who had been a really important and significant reporter, and he'd been nominated for a Pulitzer. But newspapers are dying, and they're going away, and he loses his job at the newspaper, and he winds up at this kind of website that does a lot of clickbait, celebrity,
Not sure what asked us.
and kind of like a TMZ. And so he's very frustrated by this, and he gets this assignment, which is, go out and meet some women on dating apps and write about it. And he thinks it's a stupid assignment, but as he starts doing it, he then begins to get these indications that there's something amiss on these dating apps, because there's stories about a mysterious death and then possibly another death. And he begins investigating with police, and so at some point he sees a real story here. And that was fun to do, because as the book goes on, he goes from like being totally skeptical and dismissive of the assignment to do this into turning it into a major story.
There's another character, but I don't know if you want me to mention this person. There's another one that has a relationship with Jake. I'm not sure if you crossed her out. I'm not sure if you crossed her out, so I didn't say it. Okay, so we're gonna go to Olivia is Matt's wife, and what happens when she meets Jake, and how does she learn about? That must have been really shocking that her husband's using a dating app. That is really cool.
Well, yeah, she's this is right, the wife of the man who dies at the beginning of the book, and she's got a lot going on too. She's a very angry woman, and so certainly when you meet her, you have a lot of questions about her, and we find out that she did know he was on a dating app at some point, and so the question becomes, of course, did she somehow play a role in his murder? And that's a question we ask very early in the book, and we don't answer it until the very end. So you have to read the book to know more. But she's a pretty significant character in the book, because she's if your husband is on a dating app and you're married to him, like, what is your reaction? And we explore that a lot.
Yeah, so like I should point out, like,
Yeah.
this isn't a spoiler, too much of a spoiler, but in the beginning they just think it's an accident, like and so um, it's really Jake's dogged pursuit of this story, as this inkling that there's a story there, and additionally the cops don't want to listen to it. They think he's they're kind of brushing him off, but he's like, I think there's something here, and that's why he goes to talk to Olivia, and then he gets this inkling that she might have known, and maybe she did something, and that's kind of like maybe she slipped him something. And that's kind of how it starts, because while he's on the dating app, he finds out about this guy who, fell. And then he's like, oh, that's weird. Like, what if it wasn't an accident? And that's really basically Jake is the one who pushes the story forward. I mean, that they're at odds, right? Sonya's trying to keep the story, quiet and have it ruled an accident. And then Jake's trying to bring the story out. So they're at odds. So they're, with one another.
And this is before they even know each other. And then
Right.
at some point, they come together, and there's a romantic connection between them, and that obviously heightens the interest even more. But in terms of the Olivia character, there's a number of characters in the book. I mean, just to be clear, you know this, Fran, from some of my books, and if you read any of Bonnie's books, there's a lot of twists, there's a lot of red herrings, there's a lot of potential people who might have done something that we roll out through the book, and not everything is as it seems, as they say, and you have to get to the end to find out what really happened. And beyond that, Bonnie and I have talked about this. This book's more than a whodunit. It's not just at the end you go, oh, that's the guilty person. It's a why they did it. It's the whole psychological thing of what would motivate a person to go on dating apps and kill people. What is it? Revenge? Is it anger? What is it? So we explore a lot of things like this in this book.
So there's a character that I really like. That's Gina. We have Gina, right? And what happened to Sonia's mother? And then we're going to get to Bella and Gary, two of my favorite characters.
So Gina is an alias for Sonia, because when she goes on the dating apps, sometimes she doesn't give her real name until she gets to know somebody, and that's what makes it easier for her to like do her little things that she's doing. Bella is her sister, and Gary is her brother-in-law. So she's got a married sister with 2 little kids, and she's in terms of her backstory, she's got a dad who's still alive, and her mom has died. I mean, that's kind of Sonia's backstory. So what did you want to ask about them?
So tell us about Bella and Gary. And Gary is using the dating app too. Everybody seems to be using the dating app.
Well, I guess that's a little bit of a spoiler. It's kind of like the first plot twist. Yeah. So, but let's just say that there's a pattern, right? There's a pattern that Jake starts to notice about dating apps and married guys. And that's when he starts to suspect maybe something is going on here. Maybe they're connected. Maybe these cases are connected. But again, in several interviews, and if Dick wants to talk about this here, I really appreciated his kind of like window on what a real journalist does, because he pointed out that this, like what's happening in Swipe with Jake, the one pursuing the story and trying to convince the police something's going on, is something that does happen in journalism. Do you want to speak to that a little, Dick?
Yeah. Like a lot of people sometimes think, like a huge story for a journalist, there's a big story, and then that person covers it. But the best kind of a story for a journalist, and it's one I've written about a lot of my fiction, is one that doesn't necessarily seem like a big story at the beginning, and it's the journalist who turns it into a big story. And I always use the example of Watergate, which is the biggest story, probably journalism story ever, with Woodward and Bernstein, back in the 70s. And everybody's like, oh yeah, they brought down Richard Nixon, isn't that great? But I mean, they didn't start out trying to bring down the President of the United States. They started out trying to unravel a burglary at a small-time burglary at Democratic headquarters. It didn't seem like a particularly big story. That's why Woodward and Bernstein, a couple of kids, were on it, not other big reporters. And that's kind of like a variation of what a reporter does. And in this case, Jake, he starts out with a story that he's skeptical on. He doesn't even want to do it. Then he finds something a little suspicious, so he starts looking into it, but he's still not really sure. Starts asking questions to police, and the police are kind of like, no, don't. We checked all that out. It's there's nothing to it. But he doesn't necessarily accept it. And at some point, he just keeps pushing and pushing, and then eventually he finds enough that he gets the police interested again, and turns it into a big story. But it's a process, and as a writer, that is much more interesting than if suddenly Jake was, somebody went to Jake and said, "Oh, there's been a series of murders on dating apps. Go solve it." That's not that interesting, to me. But the way we did it, I think is very very close to what a real life reporter would do.
Well, what got me upset was, well, first of all, Jake seems to be the hot dude. And all these women really like him. I can't blame him. I could see this a made for TV movie right away. For real.
We could
So he
too. Bring
meets
it on.
Sonia.
Yeah, we're in for that. Yeah.
Yeah,
Movies.
well, I figured you would, right? So she meets Sonia. What do they share? What happens? This made me cry because he was a nice guy. You killed off Gary. I felt so bad. How come you killed off Gary?
Well, you can't have a
That's one of
pattern
the
if you
questions
only
you didn't cross out.
you can't have a pattern if you only have one death. So
I
we
like
needed someone
Gary.
had to, someone had to take one for the team, you know.
Yeah, well, it doesn't seem to be too safe to be near Sonia, let me tell you. So Jeffries is the one that runs the case, right? So
Right.
how does he react and how does he deal with it?
Well, he was a fun character to write. So he's the local police homicide detective who at first writes off the first death as just an accidental death that somebody just fell off the cliff and there's nothing to it. And at first, I really had a lot of fun writing the relationship
Yeah,
between Jake and Jeffries, uh,
yeah,
because on their first exchange, Jeffries is like totally dismissive of Jake's suspicions, and Jake will say something to the effect. At one point, Jake says something like, "Well, did you check the area to see if there are any other footprints, where the guy fell?" And Jeffries' response is, "Oh my gosh, we never thought of that. Thank goodness there's a smart guy like you that tell us how to do our jobs." So there's this real sarcasm and get out of my face. And gradually, Jake wins Jeffries over, and Jeffries begins crossing the line to try and work with him, and they become allies. And that was as a writer, there were a couple of things in this book that were really fun to write. One of which was Jake going out on all the bad dates, which was like really really a fun experience. But the relationship between Jake and Jeffries, I was really happy with that and the way that turned out.
well, tell us a little bit about Olivia. She's an experience, which is Matt's wife. Yeah, she's an experience, okay?
So Olivia is it's hard to talk about her without giving a spoiler, right? But
Yeah, I know.
um obviously anytime you have a husband who dies and you find out that that he was possibly cheating and on dating apps, um, you're going to be a little suspicious of the wife. And so, of course, Jake is, and of course, the detective Jeffries is too. Uh, but she's complex. She's a complex character, as are all of our characters. And I guess that's about all we can say, I think, about Olivia without giving too much away.
Yeah, I mean, it's just like from the very beginning, you're going to have questions about Olivia because we want you to have questions about Olivia, and she's got a lot going on, and like she is a big character throughout the book.
And then there are several other characters that Jake meets on the dating app that he's suspicious of, like women that he's dating. And so he's always got this kind of in the back of his head, like juggling. And then even when he meets Sonia, like he likes Sonia, but he's not like they like each other, but they're both suspicious of each other. She's suspicious that maybe he's
Yeah.
got an agenda, and he's suspicious that maybe she really is a murderer, and he's being like, fooled by her. So there's that tension. And then in the back of his mind, Jake's always thinking of all the other women who were on the dating app who could have met either of these guys because they're all on the same app. So all the women that Jake is meeting on the app could potentially be linked to this because they're on the app too. So it could have been, any of those women. And they can't like access the app and find out like who talked to whom on the app. So he's just kind of like running down what he can with what he has.
And Jake and Sonia, obviously they have a lot of secrets they're keeping from each other that sort of emerge as they get to know each other better. But like for instance, when Sonia first meets Jake, he has a whole story about he doesn't tell her what he's doing, that I'm a reporter doing the app. He's got a whole story about writing a novel, I think, or something like, along those lines. And as they get to know each other, they find out more about each other. But there's always this unknown factor with both of them. And she's very suspicious of Jake in the beginning. Like what's he after? But she's also attracted to him. And Bonnie and I have talked about this. For us, one of the more challenging parts of writing this book was getting these two together because for the first sections of the book, quite a bit of the book, Jake and Sonia are working independently. Sonia is out doing her stuff on dating apps and meeting men and doing whatever she's doing for revenge, and Jake is trying to figure out what's going on. But obviously, at some point, we get them together, and Bonnie had written all the Sonia chapters, and I had written all the Jake chapters, and then we had to merge them, and that was kind of interesting. So I would wind up writing a little bit of Sonia stuff, and she would wind up having to do some Jake stuff.
Yeah,
What
because
is the dating app that they use? What is it?
we
And how
made
did
it
they
up.
find it?
It's
How did they
fictional.
find it?
Oh, it's a fictional dating app, but
Right.
we had quite a time coming up with a name that wasn't already used, like because
Yeah.
there's so many dating apps now, and we wanted to.
God.
I actually did like a trademark thing just so in Hawaii where I live, just to make sure I had the name. And it's not the greatest name, Met Me, but everything else we tried was already taken, so we
We
didn't want to use it.
would make up these crazy names, and then one of us would look and say, "Oops, no, I
Oh,
just
you don't
Googled
want to do this.
a real name like that," because there's so many of them, and and we wanted, to us, well, pretty much everything most everything in the book, we wanted to keep it all fictional. So we didn't want to have them on Tinder or something like that. We wanted to make clear this was not a real dating app, but one for the book.
Well, there's a couple of chapters we can't talk about, that actually you could see. So there were a couple of murders, right, in the book, and
Oh yeah, oh yeah.
I felt bad, but we won't say who did it. But the person's awfully smart. That's even scarier. So Jake's boss seems to be down his throat, and he just wants the story, right? He doesn't care what he has to do to get it. So
Oh,
you
Jake's
know, as a
boss.
reporter, Dick, how do you go after something that you would prefer, like not doing or working or whatever, and your boss says to you get your butt in gear because you're gonna have a problem.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that was another part I enjoyed writing was the conflict between Jake and his boss, because his boss is not like a real newspaper guy. He's the head of this website, and he just wants, clicks. He just wants to put something up that people are gonna read and view on the site. So all he wants from Jake is a story about all the crazy stuff going on dating apps. That's what he's started out getting. And so when Jake's there, like, no, 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 I have to do real reporting. This guy, like, no, just do the story I told you to do. But eventually, he wins the boss over too. But that conflict, and that's the kind of thing I've seen so many times in journalism. And I as somebody who was an editor myself for most of my career, not a reporter, telling people what to do, the idea of an editor not understanding what a reporter is doing is kind of fun because I'm kind of mocking myself as an editor. But it happens a lot. You have a lot of editors who stood in the way of big stories, and stories were done in spite of them, not because of them. And I wanted to include that dynamic in the book.
So I'm looking to see what's coming up next. Well, we've got the 23rd. We've got Kelly O'Haron in Armageddon, and we've got Cindy McDonald in September. I'm taking the month of July off.
Oh, nice.
And yeah, because I need to have a break. And on August 4th, we start with my field, which is reading. I'm a reading and writing staff developer. And my professor, Dr. Cavuto, who has tortured me for the last 100 years, whatever, we're going to do something on phonics and teaching kids the right way for phonographics and not using the science of reading, which is not the best way to teach anybody anything. There's a whole bunch coming up, but this is really exciting. The man that wrote the history of D-Day, Michael B. Butler, contacted me, sent me the book, and on August 18th, I'm going to be interviewing him about D-Day and how it felt being there on 6/6/94. So that's just some of what's coming up. And I have Ashley Fontaine in October and a whole bunch more. So if anybody has a new book, speak up now. So after
Awesome.
all is said and done, where do you see Jake and where do you see Sonia? And are they
Well,
coming back?
yeah. I mean, again, I don't want to get into spoilers, but
The sequel.
it's. I mean, I guess we see them as having learned a bunch of things along the way, and there's certainly a tone of redemption for both of them throughout the book. And there's no real simple answers. But I mean, again, I think it's important to kind of just follow them through the book to the end to see where it goes, because as we were doing it, neither Bonnie or I knew exactly what would happen to them.
Yeah,
They're, they're
we're both kind of pantsers, not plotters. So like we didn't even know like until about halfway through who was doing the murders. So that was like fun to write blind
Yeah.
and then but I always feel like Stephen King said, if I don't know where I'm going, then the reader probably won't guess it either. Like if so I think I think it was Stephen King who said that. But so we were kind of just taking a leap of faith and it all kind of worked out organically. And I do believe that both of them, to kind of answer your question, do grow by the end. They have a character arc. We don't want to say what it is. And you're not the first person who asked for a sequel, so that's flattering. We had a couple, of our advanced readers on NetGalley say, "Oh, is there going to be a sequel to this?" So I mean, I guess we leave enough room that there could be an interesting sequel, but we do wrap up the mystery, I think, pretty well, right? I don't think there's a lot of loose ends on it.
but
Well, I wrote your review and I went over it 7 times, by the way,
uh,
to make sure I didn't spill any beans. I
Thank
hope I
you.
didn't. I posted it this morning and I said, okay, let me cross this out, let me cross that. I have a habit of sometimes when I'm writing a review, I say read pages whatever to ever, then I cross those out because that would give it away. Where to find the answer. Okay, so, but that last chapter got me. That was brilliant.
The
That's all I'm
epilogue,
going to say.
yeah, I enjoyed the epilogue.
Absolutely.
yeah.
Absolutely. I said, oh my God, that is so perfect.
Yeah,
So,
without giving anything away, we basically wrote the book, finished the last chapter, and
yeah.
then Bonnie came up with like an epilogue chapter, and I had the same reaction. I went, "Whoa!" Yeah, like I say, there's not a clear cut line in the book in the sense that there's a lot of twists, a lot of things going on, and hopefully, by the end of the book, you'll be pleasantly surprised by everything.
It's scary. So, where do you see Jake still feels uneasy about this whole thing? He's not happy. And where do you see him and Sonia next? And I know you have to bring them back because otherwise I'd be disappointed. She
Like
Well,
worries
if they
me.
were to live on in another book, I don't know. Like maybe Sonia
She
would.
she worries me for some reason. I don't know why.
you know,
So,
you know, Fran, in terms of that, in terms of continuing characters, you never know. I don't. We probably have talked about this, but like both of my series, the Gilmore series that I did about a reporter, and the Claire Carlson series, which we've discussed at length on your show, uh, neither of them were supposed to be series. They were supposed to be a standalone book. Gilmore was going to be one book and
I'm
done,
glad it's not a standalone.
and Claire Carlson was going to be one book and done,
Yeah.
and done and done. And things developed where like, oh, well, we can keep them going. So yeah, I think it's and I know other authors have said the same thing. I think where they've almost killed off a series character in the first book, and they didn't, and it wound up doing more. So who knows? We certainly wrote this as a book, a standalone book about this event and these two characters?
Well, I would be very remiss if I didn't ask this question because that's just me. I know Dick has Claire Carlson. Bonnie, do you have another series besides this one?
So I don't really. I did two duologies, Killer
Uh-huh.
Motives, which was set in the Hudson Valley and Little Loose Ends, and then the Step Family and the Guest House, which is set in Silicon Valley.
Nice.
After that, I just do standalones. So I think it's more. I'm not much of
Now
a.
I can see better.
I'm not a series reader, and when I was always told, oh, do a series, but then I decided I like to read standalones, so I'm just writing standalones, and so I've got a book coming out called The Rich Guy's Wife on September 21st. That's my next release, and it's another one set in Manhattan in the Hamptons. And the tagline is "Be careful what you wish for." And the cover has a big diamond with a slight drip of blood on it, so you can
Nice.
imagine what that's about. Um, and that's my next release. And I think Dick has a couple releases. Oh, and I would also say that if you're looking for the audiobook of Swipe, that's going to be coming out with Podium Entertainment. They acquired the rights to our audiobook. Uh, really top talent producing that. We should have an announcement and maybe a date, maybe probably around the end of the year on the audiobook. So that's kind of exciting.
And Dick,
Yeah.
when is my Claire coming back?
Well, a couple of things I wanted to say first that Bonnie, when you talk about Bonnie's books, I mean, and she's talking about another one coming out in September, and she just, every time I turn around, Bonnie has a book coming out. She's incredibly prolific, and I say that because people say I'm pretty prolific, putting out a lot of books. I've done like 25, but she puts me to shame, and it got a little difficult while we were writing the book because no matter what I did, she would wind up writing more. And I always like to say I would I'd read a chapter a day, and I'd send her the chapter, and she'd send me two chapters. And I'd be like, oh damn, So she's really produced a lot of books in a relatively short time, and I've had the opportunity to read all of them, and I would definitely encourage people to do it. In terms of me, there's no Claire Carlson book at the moment in the works. I am talking to a different publisher now about continuing the series, so there'll be hopefully more news on that soon. But I just signed a contract with Level Best Books to put out a book called The Mogul. That'll be out next year in 2026, and that's a standalone book about a kind of a media mogul and it's spread out over several centuries in New York. And a lot of it's drawn from my own career in New York, working for big papers like the Post and Daily News and working at NBC. And, I know it's like probably an egotistical comparison, but when I wrote it, I was kind of thinking like almost like a Citizen Kane kind of thing, where you have a publisher who over the years becomes more and more corrupt and does bad things. And I just finished another book, and I've just in
Oh,
fact
good.
and it's called Primetime Crime, and it's about a child star who's trying to solve the murder that destroyed her life 15 years earlier. And I'm hoping to find a home for that very soon.
I want everything that comes out. You know that. I mean, really. My husband said this is the best thing I've ever done. It keeps me out of the stores going shopping. But yeah, I'm reading. I'm very honored that Marilyn Levinson's book's coming out in October, but I'm reading it today. I
Awesome.
never know what I'm gonna get, and I'm thanking God that some of the books are good, and some of them actually it's very hard sometimes to read a book that is not plausible, but so on. My new book came out May 17th. It's called Inverted Reality. It's pure horror. I'm very proud of myself. It's the last of the Faces Behind the Stone series. Every character is evil. Every character does something wrong. And if they don't repent and reverse it, then the mirror will make them live it forever as the face in the mirror. That's just part of it. Some of the stories are real, some of the stories are fake. Um, wrongly accused of the true story that happened to myself and my principal, because we wouldn't cheat and change the scores on a writing test. There's a whole bunch of stories that are there, and a lot of people are reading it, including all my students. So I'm hoping that more people will read it and that everybody will like it. But I'm so glad. Where can everybody find out more about you guys?
My website is just my name, BonnieTraynore.com. And we're on Amazon. Look at my Amazon author page, has everything.
And
And
Dick, where can we find out about you? And I can't wait for Claire. I get very impatient here.
I'm at www.rgbelsky.com is my website, and and I'm basically active on Facebook and Twitter. On Facebook, you can look me up under RG Belsky or my name Dick Belsky, which is my journalist name, pretty easy to find.
Well, I'm
Yeah,
hoping now that I did 2 authors, I could do panels. I'm very impressed. I haven't done but we used to we talk about writing, writer's block, or character development, or any kind of conflict. So sometimes the authors want to talk about a specific area that they're writing about. So if anybody has something they want to do, now that I know how to do this, I could do it whenever I want.
that sounds like
But
fun.
Yeah, and I have to say, Fran, it's
yeah,
interesting. I've done a lot of these shows with you, and they've
yeah.
always been on the phone, so it's kind of interesting that we all actually see each other this time.
Well, I'm glad that Dick still loves you because some of the people that have new releases, I was kind of disappointed. I won't ask anybody to review their book anymore. But there were a couple of people on Facebook that have new releases that I've reviewed before, and I won't say anything. So anybody that wants to review, just ask, and I'm not going to turn you down. But thank you so much. This
Thank
has
you,
been fun. Let
Fran.
me end the stream if my
Okay.
phone will let me do it.